Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail for a different kind of shore, a place of stark beauty, profound solitude, and a whole lot of kerosene. We're diving into the quiet daily routines of a lighthouse keeper, but not just any keeper. We're heading back to the rugged, unforgiving coast of Maine in the 1880s. Imagine a tall, lonely tower standing sentinel against crashing waves, a single, unwavering beam of light cutting through inky blackness and swirling fog. You're there, inside that tower, the one responsible for that vital flame, living a life dictated by the rhythm of the tides and the turning of the lamp. It's a world of meticulous care, unwavering vigilance, and an isolation that would make even the most dedicated introvert think twice. Given the gale force winds, the very real possibility of shipwrecks just off your front stoop, and the sheer, unadulterated loneliness, you probably wouldn't survive this gig for long without a cast iron constitution and a deep appreciation for the company of seagulls. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a small beacon of support in the vast ocean of online content. And unlike your lighthouse lamp, it doesn't require constant polishing. While you're at it, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Post your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first hint of consciousness arrives not with the jarring clamor of a modern alarm, but with a subtle shift in the deep, resonant symphony of the sea that has been your constant lullaby. It's the pre-dawn chill, a damp, salty cold that seeps through the thick stone walls of your keeper's dwelling, nudging you from the depths of sleep. You are the lighthouse keeper, here on this isolated spit of rock, somewhere along the formidable, deeply indented coast of Maine in the 1880s. Your world is a circle of stone, a spiral staircase, and the immense, ever-present ocean. This isn't a job with weekends off or a clear distinction between work and home. This is a life, a calling, a relentless, solitary duty. Outside, the darkness is still profound, the kind that swallows sounds whole, save for the rhythmic crash and sigh of waves against the granite cliffs below, and the mournful cry of a distant gull. The wind, a near-constant companion here, might be whistling a mournful tune around the eaves of your sturdy, whitewashed house. Or perhaps it's a night of eerie calm, where the only sound is the faint, almost imperceptible hum from the great lamp still burning high above in the lantern room. This is the beacon's first call, not a shout, but an internal summons, a deep-seated knowledge that your solitary day, governed by the unwavering demands of the light, is about to begin. Your internal alarm clock, finely tuned by years of this routine, knows it's time. That, or your bladder, which in the 1880s was probably one of the more reliable wake-up calls available. You swing your legs out of bed, your feet meeting the cold, bare wood of the floorboards. There's no central heating here, obviously. Warmth is a luxury earned from the kitchen stove or a small Franklin stove, fed with carefully rationed wood or coal. You dress quickly in the dim light filtering from your own small bedside lamp, or perhaps by feel. Your movements practiced and economical. Layers are key woolens, sturdy trousers, thick socks. The Maine coast in the early hours, even in summer, can have a bite that goes right through to your bones. The scent of kerosene, salt, and damp stone is the perfume of your existence. Your station might be a lonely tower on a remote, windswept headland, connected to the mainland by a rough track, or even more isolating, it could be on a small, rocky island, accessible only by boat when the weather and tides permit. If you have a family here, a wife, perhaps children, their sleeping forms are quiet in another room. Their lives also shaped by the unyielding demands of your profession. But this first ascent, this pre-dawn ritual, is yours alone. Your social media feed here is just seagulls, and maybe the occasional passing ship that doesn't even know you exist beyond your light. The U.S. Lighthouse Service, your employer, is a federal agency with exacting standards and a thick book of regulations. A mainstream historical fact is that these keepers were government employees, and their duties were codified with almost military precision. Failure to keep the light burning brightly, without interruption from sunset to sunrise, could mean disaster for mariners and dismissal for you. The weight of that responsibility settles on your shoulders anew each morning, as constant and familiar as the scent of the sea. Before you even think about breakfast, your first task is to prepare for the extinguishing of the lamp. The great Fresnel lens, that magnificent beehive of precisely ground glass prisms and bullseyes high in the tower, will soon need its daily, meticulous cleaning. But first, the lamp itself must be tended to as the sun begins to assert its own dominance. You might take a moment to glance out a small window, judging the eastern sky. Is it clear, foggy, storm-tossed? The weather here is a living entity, shaping every aspect of your day. A quirky tidbit about the lives of these isolated keepers is that the Lighthouse service, and sometimes private charitable organizations, understood the profound loneliness of the posting. To combat this, they often supplied lighthouse libraries, small, rotating collections of books and periodicals that were passed from one station to another. For many keepers, these books were a lifeline, a precious connection to the wider world of ideas, stories, and human experience beyond their rocky outcrop. You might have a favorite and well-thumbed volume waiting for a quiet moment later in the day. But that's for later. Now, the tower calls. You light a small hand lantern, its flickering flame pushing back the lingering shadows in your dwelling, and step out into the raw, pre-dawn air. The wind whips at your coat, tasting of salt and distant pine forests. The stars, if the sky is clear, might still be blazing with an intensity rarely seen in more populated areas, unsullied by the glow of city lights. Above you, the lighthouse tower looms, a silent, steadfast sentinel, its powerful beam still sweeping its appointed arc across the dark waters. Historians still argue whether the deeply romanticized image of the solitary, stoic, and heroic lighthouse keeper, endlessly battling the elements and saving countless lives, accurately reflects the day-to-day reality for the majority of these men and sometimes women. Or if this popular image tends to overshadow the often mundane, highly repetitive, intensely bureaucratic, and sometimes mind-numbingly boring aspects of the job. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in between the heroism and the drudgery. For you, as you take those first steps towards the tower base, it's not about heroism or boredom, it's about duty. The light has burned faithfully through the night, a beacon of safety in a treacherous world. Your solitary day is beginning, marked by the first quiet call of that enduring, man-made star. Your work-life balance is essentially a spiral staircase and a very, very big lamp. The pre-dawn air is sharp and clean as you make your way from the keeper's dwelling to the base of the lighthouse tower. Your hand lantern casts flickering shadows on the rough stone, and the only sounds are your own steady footsteps, the eternal sigh of the sea, and perhaps the distant, mournful cry of a loon. Above you, the great light still revolves, its powerful beam a reassuring presence against the fading night. Now begins the first significant ritual of your day, the ascent to the lantern room, the extinguishing of the lamp, and the initial meticulous cleaning that precedes the sun's full dominion. This isn't just a job, it's a carefully choreographed daily ballet between human diligence and elemental forces. You unlock the heavy tower door, the sound of the bolt echoing in the confined space, and step inside. The air within is cool, still, smelling faintly of old stone, dampness, and the ever-present subtle aroma of lamp oil. Before you, the spiral staircase winds its way upwards, a seemingly endless coil disappearing into the darkness above. This is your daily commute, your stairmaster from a particularly demanding, briny hell. With practiced ease, you begin the climb, your lantern held high, each step familiar, each turn ingrained in your muscle memory. The rhythmic thud of your boots on the iron or stone treads is a lonely counterpoint to the wind that might be moaning around the tower's circumference. As you ascend, the temperature changes subtly. Nearing the top, a faint warmth begins to permeate the air, radiating downwards from the lantern room where the massive lamp has been burning faithfully all night. You finally reach the small door leading into the lantern room itself, and as you open it, you're greeted by a blast of concentrated heat and the intense, almost living presence of the light. You step inside into the dazzling heart of your domain, the great Fresnel lens, a magnificent, multifaceted jewel of precisely cut glass prisms and bullseyes, surrounds the central lamp, multiplying its light into those life-saving beams. This incredible invention, a mainstream historical fact, being that the Fresnel lens, developed in the 1820s by Augustin Jean Fresnel, revolutionized lighthouse illumination worldwide, was by your time in the 1880s the shining heart of most significant lighthouses. It's a thing of intricate beauty, but also a demanding mistress requiring constant, tender care. Through the thick glass panes of the lantern room, you can see the eastern horizon beginning to glow. Soft pinks, pale oranges, the first hint of the approaching sunrise painting the vast expanse of the Atlantic. But there's no time to linger on the view just yet. Your first duty is to the lamp. Depending on its order and size, it might be a powerful argand lamp with multiple concentric wicks, burning whale oil in earlier times, but by the 1880s, more likely high-quality kerosene or a similar mineral oil. With practiced hands, you begin the careful procedure for extinguishing it. This isn't like blowing out a candle in that you reduce the flow of oil, carefully lower the wicks, ensuring they are properly doused to prevent smoldering or a messy reignition. The powerful, steady flame that has pierced the darkness for hours dwindles, flickers, and finally, with a soft sigh, relinquishes its vigil. The sudden absence of its intense light changes the entire atmosphere of the lantern room, from a blazing heart of fire to a comparatively dim, though still warm, chamber. Now, as the sun itself begins to breach the horizon, its golden rays spilling across the waves and painting the rugged Maine coastline in breathtaking hues, you can turn to the first cleaning tasks. The lamp, that hard-working diva, has likely produced a fine layer of soot on the inside of the lantern room glass and on the exterior of the lens itself, especially if the combustion wasn't perfectly clean all night. Using soft cloths, perhaps chamois leather, and maybe a specialized cleaning solution, the official Lighthouse service manual had very specific instructions. You meticulously wipe down the interior panes of the lantern room, ensuring no speck of grime will obstruct the newly risen sun's light, or, more importantly, the lamp's light when it's relit at dusk. Then comes the initial cleaning of the magnificent Fresnel lens itself. This is a task performed with almost religious reverence. The scores of precisely angled prisms and the central bullseye are incredibly effective at refracting and concentrating light. But they are also delicate. A scratch, a chip, even greasy fingerprints could impair its efficiency, scattering the precious light. So, with gentle, practiced movements, you wipe away any accumulated soot, dust, or the dried salt spray that the ocean winds might have hurled against the tower during the night. A quirky and rather grim tidbit of lighthouse keeping is that you also had to check for, and often remove, the remains of birds that had tragically collided with the lantern glass during the night, drawn by the powerful beam. It's a sad but necessary part of the morning routine, ensuring nothing obstructs that vital pathway of light. The original angry birds, perhaps leaving their mark. Once the lamp is safely out and the initial tidying of the lantern room and lens exterior is complete, you descend those spiral stairs once more. Perhaps your knees complaining a little less on the way down. Back in your dwelling, or in a small office space at the base of the tower. Another crucial morning ritual awaits the logbook. This isn't a personal diary for angsty poetry about the sea, though you might keep one of those separately. This is an official U.S. Lighthouse service record. With neat, careful script. You dip your pen in ink and record the vital statistics of the night just past the exact time the lamp was extinguished. The state of the lamp and lens, the amount of oil consumed measured with precision, the weather conditions at dawn, wind direction, and strength, visibility, sea state, any notable shipping traffic cited during the night, and any unusual occurrences or maintenance needs. This logbook is a critical document, a testament to your diligence, and a vital record for the service. Hope you remembered to dot all your I's and cross all your T's, and accurately report any passing sea serpents. Historians still argue whether the predominant psychological impact of this kind of relentless, isolated, and highly responsible routine on lighthouse keepers was a profound sense of crushing loneliness and unavoidable mental strain, leading to depression or eccentricity, or if for many, the structure, the clear sense of vital purpose, and the intimate daily connection with the raw power and beauty of nature actually fostered a unique kind of resilience, inner peace, and profound contentment that offset the undeniable hardships of the solitary life. As you close the logbook, the sun now fully risen, another day of quiet duty stretches before you. The lens has been tended, the light has yielded to the dawn, and the first chapter of your solitary day is complete. The logbook entry is complete, its neat lines chronicling the night's vigil and the state of the dawn. The sun is climbing higher, its rays now fully illuminating the rugged Maine coastline and the vast, restless ocean. But your morning's most demanding and crucial task is only just beginning. Having extinguished the great lamp and given the lantern room its initial once-over, you now turn your full attention to the heart of the lighthouse, the magnificent, multifaceted Fresnel lens and the intricate lamp mechanism it houses. This isn't a quick wipe down with a paper towel. This is a dedicated, hours-long ritual of polishing precious glass and gleaming brass, a testament to the meticulous care required to keep this life-saving beacon burning at its absolute brightest. This lens is basically a giant, extremely fragile celebrity, and you are its personal, highly dedicated, and chronically underpaid assistant. The Fresnel lens, that marvel of French optical engineering, is the star of the show. Its ingenious design, a complex array of annular rings, dioptric refracting prisms, and catadioptric reflecting and refracting elements, all precisely ground and angled, can take the light from a single oil lamp and transform it into a concentrated, powerful beam visible for many miles out to sea. But its effectiveness is utterly dependent on its cleanliness. Even a thin film of soot from the lamp, a layer of dust, the dried residue of salt spray, or, heaven forbid, a greasy fingerprint can significantly scatter and dim the light, reducing its range and potentially endangering the very mariners it's meant to guide. Your job is to ensure this intricate assembly of glass is as immaculate as humanly possible. Every single day, no pressure. First, you might carefully remove the soft linen or canvas dust covers that were draped over the lens during the day to protect its delicate surfaces. Then, armed with your specialized cleaning kit, soft linen cloths, never anything abrasive, perhaps fine chamois leather for the final polish, a feather duster or a soft brush for intricate crevices, and a specific cleaning solution, the Lighthouse Service, a mainstream historical fact, issued very detailed manuals specifying approved cleaning agents, often spirits of wine or highly diluted ammonia, though sometimes just pure water meticulously applied and dried was recommended. You begin the painstaking process. This isn't a spray and wipe job you can do while listening to a podcast. This is focused, meditative work. You start at the top of the massive lens, which might be a first-order giant for a major coastal light, standing taller than you, or a smaller, though still complex, fourth or fifth-order lens for a harbor light. Each individual prism, each curved panel must be addressed. You breathe on a section of glass, then polish it with a circular motion until it gleams, absolutely free of any streaks or haze. You work your way around and down, section by section, your movements economical and precise. You're probably intimately familiar with every square inch of this glass giant, every subtle curve, every joint in its brass framework. A quirky tidbit from the era is that some keepers, faced with the challenge of reaching every nook and cranny of these complex structures, would fashion their own specialized cleaning tools, perhaps a padded stick for reaching high prisms, or a uniquely shaped brush for getting into tight corners. a testament to their personal ingenuity and dedication to their luminous charge. The brasswork that holds the lens elements together and the components of the lamp itself also demand your attention. In the salty, humid air of the Maine coast, brass tarnishes quickly, so out comes the polish, likely a mixture of rotten stone and oil, or a similar period-appropriate abrasive, and more soft cloths. Every brass surface of the lamp's burners, fuel lines, adjustment knobs, and any reflective panels behind the flame must be polished to a high sheen. This isn't just for aesthetics, though a gleaming lamp room was a point of pride for any good keeper. Clean. Polished brass resists corrosion and ensures that all the moving parts of the lamp mechanism function smoothly and reliably. That fancy argon lamp, with its multiple wicks and central draft tube designed for a brighter, cleaner burn, needs its components to be in perfect working order. One smudge on the lens, one sticky knob on the lamp, could be the difference between a clear warning beam and a maritime disaster. You can imagine the lighthouse inspector, on his periodic and much-dreaded visits, running a white glove over your brasswork. The horror. This cleaning and polishing isn't just a chore, it's a vital part of understanding your equipment. As you handle each piece, you are also inspecting it for any signs of wear, any loose fittings, any potential problems. You become intimately acquainted with the soul of your lighthouse. Historians still argue whether this intense, almost obsessive level of meticulous cleaning and polishing demanded by the lighthouse service for the Fresnel lenses and their associated machinery was always in every detail, purely functional for maximizing the lumen output and longevity of the equipment, or if it also served a deeper psychological or symbolic purpose. Did it reinforce the keeper's discipline and sense of unwavering duty? Underscore the service's absolute authority and commitment to standards, and perhaps even elevate the light itself to a quasi-sacred status? A symbol of order and safety in a chaotic world? It likely did all of these things. It wasn't just about being clean, it was about being perfectly ready. Hours can pass in this focused activity. The only sounds are the gentle swish of your polishing cloth, the occasional metallic click as you check a mechanism, and the ever-present murmur of the wind and sea outside the thick lantern room glass. It's a solitary, repetitive task, but one that carries immense responsibility. You are the guardian of this precious, intricate machine, this beacon against the darkness. Your hands, though perhaps rough from other chores, move with a surprising delicacy over the fragile glass. You know that a single careless moment, a dropped tool, an overly aggressive polish, could damage one of the irreplaceable prisms, diminishing the light you are sworn to protect. Fingerprint art was definitely not encouraged. Finally, after what seems like an eternity of careful labor, the task is done. The great lens sparkles, its myriad facets catching the daylight and throwing off tiny rainbows. The brass gleams with a warm, golden light. The entire lantern room feels clean, bright, and ready. You might step back for a moment, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling over you. This magnificent assembly of glass and metal, so dependent on your daily care, is prepared to do its vital work once more when darkness falls. The precious glass has been polished, the intricate mechanism tended. Now onto the next of your many quiet, crucial routines. The last gleaming prism of the Fresnel lens has been polished to perfection, its brass fittings shining like newly minted gold. The heart of your lighthouse is immaculate, ready for its nightly duty. But your meticulous morning responsibilities? Arachne. My dear lighthouse keeper, old habits die hard, especially when dealing with such dedicated artisans, are not quite finished. Having tended to the physical apparatus of the light, you now turn to its written soul, the official lighthouse logbook. This sturdy, leather-bound volume is more than just a diary. It's a crucial record, a daily testament to your diligence, and a vital link in the chain of maritime safety. Time to swap the polishing cloth for the pen and chronicle the interplay of ink, wind, and tide. You settle down at your small desk, perhaps in a cozy corner of the keeper's dwelling, or in a designated office space at the base of the tower. The logbook itself is an imposing, official-looking tome supplied by the U.S. Lighthouse service. Its pages are likely ruled with neat columns and headings, awaiting your careful entries. This isn't the place for flowery prose or personal confessions about how the incessant fog is making you consider taking up interpretive dance just to break the monotony. No, this is for facts, observations, and precise records. It's the original blog, really, but with significantly more fog and a distinct lack of cat videos or selfies. With a deep breath, you dip your steel-nibbed pen into the ink pot. Good. Legible handwriting is a must. The lighthouse inspector, on his infrequent but thorough visits, will be scrutinizing these pages. Your first task is to complete the entries for the night just past and the conditions at dawn. You've already noted the time the lamp was extinguished. Now, you meticulously record the amount of oil consumed. This was a critical piece of data, measured carefully from the lamp's reservoir, essential for managing supplies and ensuring the station never ran out of its lifeblood. Running out of oil was the ultimate keeper faux pas, like a chef running out of salt, only with potentially more dire shipwrecky consequences. Next, the weather. Oh, the weather. In 1880s coastal Maine, it's not just small talk, it's a dominant, often tyrannical force. You consult your instruments if your station is equipped with them, perhaps a barometer to record atmospheric pressure. Its rise and fall a key indicator of approaching storms, and a thermometer for air and sea temperature. You note the wind direction, likely determined by a sturdy wind vane atop the tower, or by observing the movement of smoke from your chimney. Wind strength is estimated, perhaps using the Beaufort scale or descriptive terms. Light airs, fresh breeze, strong gale. You record cloud cover, visibility crucial for mariners, and any precipitation, rain, snow, sleet, or that ever-present Maine specialty, fog. The density and duration of fog are particularly important entries. Tuesday foggy, Wednesday still foggy, Thursday pretty sure a seagull just asked for directions. It's that foggy. The excitement is palpable. Then come observations of the sea itself, the state of the tide, the height and character of the waves. Any notable shipping traffic cited during your night watch is also dutifully recorded. The type of vessel, schooner, steamer, fishing smack, brigantine, its direction of travel, the time it was sighted, and perhaps even its name or distinguishing features if it passed close enough to be identified. These records could be vital in accounting for overdue ships or investigating maritime incidents. You also note any unusual occurrences, a particularly fierce squall, a display of the northern lights, the sighting of a pod of whales, or any equipment malfunctions or repairs undertaken. If a flock of birds collided with the lantern, remember our feathered friends from Section 2? That goes in. If the foghorn, if your station has one that you operate manually with a bellow or crank, was sounded, its hours of operation are logged. A mainstream historical fact is that these meticulously kept lighthouse logbooks from the U.S. Lighthouse Service are now considered invaluable historical documents by researchers. They provide a rich, detailed, day-by-day account of coastal weather patterns over many decades. Maritime traffic, the operational history of the lighthouses themselves, and fascinating glimpses into the isolated lives and routines of the keepers. They are a treasure trove for anyone studying climate history, maritime trade, or the social history of these remote outposts. While the official logbook was meant for strictly factual entries, a quirky tidbit is that the intense desire for personal expression sometimes found an outlet elsewhere. Keepers were generally discouraged from including personal feelings, frustrations, or overly descriptive accounts of non-official matters in the log. The tone was expected to be formal and concise, so some keepers maintained separate private diaries where they could record their more poetic thoughts on the crashing waves, their loneliness, their arguments with particularly stubborn seagulls, or perhaps their secret recipe for clam chowder. The official log was for the service, the diary was for the soul. you definitely wouldn't be logging. Conversed with a particularly eloquent crab today regarding the existential merits of barnacles. That's for the other book. Historians still argue whether the vast repository of detailed weather observations, diligently recorded by lighthouse keepers across many decades, using the instrumentation available to them in the 19th century, provided a truly reliable and scientifically consistent dataset for early climatological studies. Factors like the inevitable variability in the quality and calibration of instruments from station to station, the differing levels of training or observational rigor among individual keepers, and the inherently subjective nature of some observations like estimating wind speed without an anemometer all introduce complexities for modern analysis. Nevertheless, these logs represent one of an earliest, most widespread, and continuous observational networks we have. Each entry is made with care. The ink flows, capturing the essence of another cycle of duty. This logbook is your testament, your accountability. It proves the light was kept, the watches were stood, the supplies were managed. It's a record of your unwavering commitment in the face of storms, solitude, and the relentless demands of the lamp. Once the morning's entries are complete, you blot the ink carefully, close the heavy cover, and prepare for the next set of tasks that your quiet, ordered, and profoundly important day will bring. The ink is dry, but the wind and tide, they never rest. The official logbook, with its neat columns of ink testifying to the wind, the tide, and the steadfast burning of your lamp, is now closed for the morning. The meticulous care of the precious Fresnel lens and its brassy lamp heart is complete. But your work, my dedicated 1880s Maine lighthouse keeper, is far from over. A lighthouse isn't just a giant lamp, it's a complex, isolated structure constantly battered by the elements, and it, along with its associated dwelling and outbuildings, demands your unceasing attention. It's time to inspect and maintain your tall stone charge, from its whitewashed walls to its winding iron stairs. Think of it as owning a very needy, very tall, very old house, but with the added thrill of gale force winds and the constant threat of being dive-bombed by angry seagulls. Your first task is often a visual inspection, a slow, methodical walk around the entire station. You cast a critical eye over the tower itself. Most Maine lighthouses of this era were sturdy affairs, built of granite, brick, or stone, designed to withstand the ferocious nor'easters that swept the coast. Their primary defense against the relentless assault of wind, rain, and salt spray was a thick coat of whitewash or paint. This wasn't just for aesthetics. Though a gleaming white tower against a blue sky or a dark sea was indeed a striking sight and an important day mark for mariners. That brilliant white coating helped to seal the masonry, preventing water from seeping into cracks and freezing, which could gradually destroy the stonework. A mainstream historical fact is that U.S. lighthouse service regulations were incredibly strict about the upkeep and appearance of stations. Keepers were explicitly responsible for maintaining everything in good order, which included frequent whitewashing or painting. It was probably Maine's favorite, if somewhat Sisyphean, extreme sport. So, you check the whitewash. Are there any patches where it's flaking or peeling? Any telltale stains that might indicate a leak or dampness within the walls? You examine the masonry itself, looking for cracked stones or crumbling mortar that might need repointing. A painstaking task you might have to undertake yourself if it's minor, or report to the district inspector if it's serious. The ironwork of the lantern room, the intricate framework holding those precious glass panes, the ventilator cap designed to draw smoke and heat away from the lamp, the railings around the gallery deck all need to be inspected for rust. Rust, here on the salty coast, is the true insidious enemy, constantly trying to devour any exposed metal. Regular cleaning, scraping, and application of protective paint, often a distinctive red lead or black, are essential. You probably have an ongoing personal feud with rust, a villain you battle daily. The windows of the tower, those small, deep-set openings that provide light to the winding staircase within, need attention too. Are the panes secure in their frames? Is the putty holding them watertight still intact? The massive glass panes of the lantern room itself, which you cleaned from the inside earlier, also need their external surfaces checked again, especially after a storm, for any new coating of salt or guano from particularly inconsiderate seabirds. You might find yourself having a silent, one-sided argument with a seagull about whose job it is to clean up its particular brand of abstract art from your freshly painted railing. Then there are the winding stairs themselves, the pathway to your nightly vigil. Whether they are made of iron or stone, they must be kept clean and safe. A slip or a fall on those stairs, especially when you're carrying a heavy can of oil in the dark, could be disastrous. So you check for loose treads, wobbly railings, anything that could pose a hazard. The lightning rod or conductor system, an essential safety feature for a tall, isolated structure so prone to attracting electrical storms, needs to be inspected to ensure it's properly grounded and its connections are sound. You really don't want your lighthouse to become an impromptu, very bright, and very brief fireworks display. Your responsibilities extend beyond the tower to the keeper's dwelling, the oil house where the precious kerosene or lamp oil was safely stored, usually in a separate, fireproof building, perhaps a fog signal house if your station was equipped with one, and any boathouses or storage sheds. All these structures require the same diligent oversight: roofs checked for leaks, gutters cleared, doors and windows kept in good repair, foundations inspected. A quirky tidbit relating to the keeper's life is that at many isolated stations, especially those on islands, the keeper or their family often maintained a small vegetable garden to supplement their diet, which consisted largely of tinned goods and whatever fresh supplies the tender boat could bring in frequently. Trying to coax vegetables to grow in thin, salty soil, constantly battling wind and hungry wildlife, would have been another demanding grounds upkeep task, a testament to their resourcefulness and desire for a bit of fresh green on their plate. Historians still argue whether the almost obsessive level of cleanliness, order, and meticulous maintenance, the constant whitewashing, the polishing of brass to a mirror shine, the perfectly kept grounds, demanded by the lighthouse service was driven entirely by the practical necessities of ensuring the light's optimal performance and the station's longevity, or if it also served a deeper, perhaps quasi-military or bureaucratic purpose. Was it about instilling discipline in the keepers, projecting an image of unwavering governmental authority and efficiency even in the most remote outposts, or ensuring that these beacons of safety were also visual symbols of perfect, unwavering order against the chaos of the sea? It was likely a blend of all these things. You are, in essence, a jack of all trades, a painter, a mason, a glazier, a carpenter, a metalworker, and a general handyman, all rolled into one. You have a limited set of tools, a finite supply of materials delivered by the lighthouse tender, and an infinite list of chores. Resourcefulness and a knack for improvisation are essential qualities. This constant battle against decay, against the relentless onslaught of the elements, is a core part of your quiet daily routine, a silent, often unsung, testament to your dedication. The tower's constant needs are your constant companions, ensuring that the light and the structure that holds it remain steadfast. The endless task of inspecting and maintaining the lighthouse tower, that stalwart sentinel against the Maine coast's relentless assault, is a testament to your practical skills and unwavering diligence. But keeping the structure itself sound is only part of the equation for survival and operational readiness. Now, you turn your attention from stone and iron to something equally vital: the careful management of fuel, food, and all the other necessities that sustain both the life-saving light and your own life in this isolated outpost. This is where your skills as a logistician, a quartermaster, and a careful planner come to the fore, all played out against that ever-present backdrop of profound isolation and the unpredictable moods of the sea. Welcome to Supply Chain Management 1880s Extreme Edition. The absolute lifeblood of your lighthouse is, of course, the lamp oil. By the 1880s, this is most likely high-grade kerosene, a significant improvement over the whale oil or lard oil used in earlier decades, as it burned cleaner and brighter. But whatever the type, it is a finite resource, precious as gold. It arrives, along with most of your other supplies, via the Lighthouse tender, a dedicated vessel operated by the U.S. Lighthouse Service. A mainstream historical fact is that these tender ships were the crucial link for keepers, responsible for delivering everything from oil and rations to mail, personnel, and the dreaded lighthouse inspector. Their arrival, perhaps quarterly or semi-annually depending on your station's remoteness and accessibility, is a major event, a moment of intense activity and connection. It's like Amazon Prime, but with a much longer delivery window, a far greater reliance on favorable winds and tides, and considerably more riding on each shipment. Your oil is stored in a dedicated oil house, usually a small, sturdy, fireproof building, set a safe distance from the tower and dwelling to minimize fire risk. Inside, the air is thick with the pungent, distinctive aroma of kerosene. Barrels or large metal casks are neatly arranged, and it's your solemn duty to keep a meticulous inventory. Remember those logbook entries detailing nightly oil consumption? They're not just for bureaucratic record keeping, they are essential for you to track usage, calculate burn rates, and ensure you always have enough on hand to last until the tender's next scheduled visit, and then some, to account for potential delays due to storms or other unforeseen circumstances. Running out of oil is unthinkable. It means the light fails, and ships and lives are endangered. The anxiety of watching your oil reserves dwindle during a long, stormy winter when the tender is overdue must be a heavy weight indeed. You probably count those barrels more often than a dragon counts its hoard. Then there's food. Your diet in this isolated Maine lighthouse is unlikely to feature many gourmet delicacies, unless you consider salt pork a 5-star ingredient. Supplies delivered by the tender would consist mainly of non-perishable staples, barrels of flour, salted beef or pork, dried beans and peas, rice, hardtack biscuits, the 19th century's answer to a doorstop, but allegedly edible sai, potatoes if they'd keep, sugar, coffee, and tea. It's a diet designed for sustenance rather than excitement. Oh boy, salt pork and beans again might be a frequent, if unspoken, dinnertime refrain. To supplement these rather monotonous rations, you rely on your own resourcefulness. As we touched upon that small vegetable garden, you might tend with such care if your station's soil and exposure permit could provide welcome fresh greens, potatoes, or root vegetables during the growing season. Fishing from the rocks or a small dory, if conditions allow, could yield fresh cod, pollock, or mackerel. You might set lobster pots. Hunting for seabirds or small game, if permitted and practical, could add more variety. And foraging for wild berries, mussels, or edible seaweed along the shore could supplement your larder. You also become adept at food preservation techniques passed down through generations: salting, smoking, pickling, and drying whatever you can catch or grow, ensuring nothing goes to waste and that you have something to see you through the lean times. Beyond oil and food, there's a host of other necessities to manage. Firewood or coal for the stoves that heat your dwelling and cook your meals. Cleaning supplies for the endless battle against grime and tarnish. Spare wicks, lamp chimneys, and other parts for the lamp. Tools for repairs and maintenance. Basic medical supplies, a well-stocked first aid kit was essential, as a doctor was often days or weeks away. And, of course, those precious books from the Lighthouse Library, carefully read and reread to ward off the encroaching tedium of long, solitary evenings. Making a requisition list for the tender's next visit requires careful thought and foresight. You can't just pop down to the general store if you forget the matches or run out of coffee. Running out of coffee in a place like this, that, my friend, constitutes a genuine DEFCON 1 level emergency. A quirky tidbit reflecting the extreme isolation of some stations is that keepers sometimes developed ingenious, if unofficial, systems for signaling to passing ships or even the distant mainland in case of a dire emergency. like a critical illness or an almost complete depletion of vital supplies when the tender was catastrophically overdue. This might involve specific arrangements of flags during the day, or even with a heavy dose of irony, carefully controlled signal fires at night, distinct from the lighthouse beam itself, a desperate call for help from the very person whose job it was to provide a constant, unwavering signal to others. Historians still argue whether the official rations and supplies provided by the U.S. Lighthouse Service were generally sufficient and of adequate quality for the keepers and their families, especially at the most remote, storm-battered, and difficult to resupply stations. While regulations aimed for fairness, the realities of 19th century logistics, bureaucratic inertia, and sometimes harsh environmental conditions could mean that keepers frequently had to endure periods of genuine hardship, making do with less or relying heavily on their own foraging and preservation skills to see them through. So, your role as keeper extends far beyond just tending the light. You are a meticulous manager of resources, a forecaster of needs, a guardian of vital stockpiles. Every drop of oil, every pound of flour, every wick and matchstick is accounted for, their consumption carefully weighed against the vast, unpredictable backdrop of your isolation and the steadfast turning of the seasons. This constant, quiet calculation, this prudent husbanding of resources, is another of the forgotten but essential daily routines that define your solitary responsible life on the edge of the unforgiving sea. The vital supplies of lamp oil, food, and other necessities are now meticulously inventoried, carefully stored, and your mind is, for the moment, at ease regarding the station's readiness. The physical structure of the tower and dwellings has been inspected, and any immediate pressing maintenance attended to. But even in a life as rigorously structured and demanding as yours, there are interludes, those quieter hours between the major routines of tending the light, cleaning the lens, and performing upkeep. This is your off-duty time. Though that term feels a bit misleading when your workplace is also your home, and the nearest neighbor might be miles away across a treacherous stretch of water, or perhaps just a particularly opinionated colony of seals. So, how do you, our solitary 1880s Maine lighthouse keeper, fill these quiet crafts of solitude with the ever-present sea as your constant, murmuring companion? First, let's be clear. Off-duty doesn't mean you're completely off the hook. A part of your mind is always attuned to the weather, the state of the sea, the general well-being of your station. You are, in essence, always on call. But between the end of your morning chores and the preparations for the evening's lamp lighting, or during the long stretches of a day watch if you have an assistant for the night, there are hours to be filled. And in the profound isolation of a Maine lighthouse, filling those hours constructively is key to maintaining your sanity and spirit. Boredom and loneliness are as much enemies as rust or a dwindling oil supply. Your main conversation partner is the ocean. And let's be honest, its conversational repertoire, while impressive in its power, can be a tad repetitive after a while. Mostly roaring, crashing, and whispering. Reading is a profound solace, a vital connection to the world beyond your rocky perch. Remember those lighthouse libraries we mentioned? Those small, rotating collections of books provided by the U.S. Lighthouse Service or charitable groups. They are your lifeline to other minds, other places, other times. You eagerly await the arrival of a fresh box of books with the tender, hoping for a new novel by Dickens or Cooper, a volume of poetry by Longfellow or Whittier, perhaps a history of some distant land, or even practical manuals on navigation, engineering, or natural history. You might sit by the warmth of your stove in the keeper's dwelling, the wind howling outside, lost in tales of adventure, romance, or discovery. Finishing a particularly long Victorian novel in these circumstances must have been the original binge watch, complete with the existential dread of, what do I read next? Writing, too, becomes a quiet craft. Beyond the official, factual entries in the lighthouse log, you might keep a personal diary. Here, in the privacy of its pages, you can record your more intimate thoughts, your observations on the changing moods of the sea and sky, your feelings of loneliness or contentment, your hopes, your fears. These personal journals, when they survive, offer historians precious, unvarnished glimpses into the true human experience of lighthouse keeping. You also pen letters, long, detailed letters to family and friends on the mainland, to be sent off with the infrequent mail delivery by the tender. Each word is carefully chosen, a bridge across the miles of water. Perhaps inspired by the wild beauty surrounding you, you even try your hand at poetry or sketching, attempting to capture the stark majesty of a storm-tossed sea or the delicate beauty of a sunrise over the Atlantic. Then there are the manual crafts, the work of your hands that isn't directly related to lighthouse maintenance but serves to occupy the mind and produce something useful or beautiful. Whittling and carving are common pastimes. With a sharp knife and a piece of driftwood scavenged from the shore, or a block of wood supplied by the tender, you might carve small animal figures, intricate patterns, or even practical items like tool handles or decorative elements for your dwelling. Your collection of wooden seagulls might be getting quite impressive, if perhaps a little unsettling to any unexpected visitors. Scrimshaw, the art of carving on whalebone or ivory, might be something you engage in if such materials are available. Though by the 1880s it was perhaps less common than in the heyday of whaling. Mending is a constant necessity. Your clothes, exposed to harsh weather and hard work, need frequent repair. Sails for your station's small dory if you have one for fishing or short trips in calm weather. Fishing nets, even the canvas covers for the lens, all require stitching and patching. Knitting or crocheting, skills perhaps learned from a mother or wife, could produce warm socks, mittens, or scarves, essential for enduring the bitter Maine winters. These practical crafts are not just time fillers, they are acts of self-sufficiency, essential for survival in your isolated world. You probably still felt like you had nothing to wear that wasn't made of scratchy, sensible wool, though. A mainstream historical fact is that many 19th century lighthouse keepers, out of sheer necessity and to combat the profound monotony and isolation of their posts, became remarkably self-sufficient and skilled in a wide array of such practical crafts and quiet pursuits. Their official duties, while demanding, still left interstices of time that needed to be filled. A quirky tidbit is that some keepers developed into keen amateur naturalists or artists. Surrounded by an often unspoiled natural environment, they might make detailed observations of local bird life, marine creatures, or coastal flora, sometimes collecting shells, pressing seaweeds, or even contributing specimens or notes to scientific societies on the mainland. Others might take up painting or sketching the dramatic seascapes and skyscapes that were their daily view, finding an artistic outlet for their unique perspective. Imagine your detailed study. The mating habits of the lesser black-backed gull, a 7-year observational study from my kitchen window. Groundbreaking stuff. Historians still argue whether the extreme, prolonged solitude experienced by many lighthouse keepers, especially those at the most isolated stag stations manned only by men, without families, typically fostered profound philosophical insights, deep introspection, and a heightened spiritual connection with nature, as some romantic accounts suggest, or if it more commonly led to various forms of psychological strain, such as eccentricity, melancholia, depression, or even a gradual dulling of the mental faculties due to lack of varied stimulation and social interaction. The reality was likely a complex spectrum, highly dependent on the individual keeper's personality, resilience, and the specific conditions of their station. For you, these quiet crafts of solitude are more than just ways to pass the time. They are anchors, ways to maintain a sense of order, purpose, and connection in a world that can often feel overwhelmingly empty and elemental. Whether it's the turn of a well-carved bird, the neat lines of mending on a worn garment, or the unfolding drama in the pages of a book. These small, focused activities provide a necessary counterpoint to the vastness of the ocean and the sky, and the relentless kind of solitary rhythm of your watch. Those quiet crafts of solitude, the well-thumbed books, the meticulously carved pieces of driftwood, the endless mending provide a necessary anchor in the vast ocean of your isolated hours. But what if your station isn't entirely solitary? What if the echoing silence of the keeper's dwelling is punctuated by other voices, other footsteps? For many lighthouse keepers in 1880s Maine, especially at stations that were somewhat less terrifyingly remote than a bare rock lashed by constant storms, family life was a reality, a shared existence within the sturdy stone walls. Their lives also intricately woven into the rhythm of the great light. If you are one such keeper, then your island family life, as the outline quaintly puts it, brings both unique joys and formidable challenges to your daily routines. The decision to bring your wife, and perhaps children, to live at a lighthouse station was not one taken lightly. It meant willingly embracing a life of profound isolation for them as well. Far from the amenities, schools, and social bustle of mainland towns. Yet, for many, it was the only way to maintain a semblance of family connection in a profession that demanded such unwavering on-site presence. A mainstream historical fact is that a significant number of 19th century U.S. lighthouse keepers were indeed married men, and their wives and children often resided with them at the station. These women frequently played crucial, though often officially unpaid and unrecognized, roles as de facto assistant keepers, their contributions essential to the smooth operation of the light. There were even a number of officially appointed female lighthouse keepers, women of remarkable fortitude and skill. If you have a wife at the station, she is more than just a companion. She is your partner in this demanding life. While you attend to the primary duties of the lamp and tower, she manages the household under conditions that would make most town-dwelling women quail. She cooks meals on a wood or coal stove, often with limited or monotonous ingredients between tender visits. She launders clothes by hand, battling the damp, salty air that seems to permeate everything. She tends the children, educates them, and maintains a sense of order and domesticity in a place where nature constantly threatens to overwhelm. And very often, she learns the intricate workings of the light itself. She knows how to trim the wicks, how to clean the lens, perhaps not with your obsessive, almost religious zeal, but competently nonetheless. How to stand watch if you are ill, exhausted from a particularly brutal storm, or need to make a rare, essential trip for urgent supplies or repairs if the station has a boat. Her resilience is a quiet force, as steady as the light you both serve. And if there are children, their laughter, or sometimes their squabbles, echoes in the otherwise quiet corners of your isolated domain. What a peculiar, extraordinary upbringing this is for them. Their playground is not a village green, but the rugged shoreline, the tide pools teeming with strange creatures, the base of the mighty tower itself. A quirky tidbit is that children growing up in these lighthouse families often developed an astonishingly intimate knowledge of their unique environment. They could identify every type of seabird, predict the weather from subtle shifts in the wind and waves, and recognize the silhouettes and rigging of passing ships from miles away, sometimes even knowing them by name. Their screen time was the ever-changing face of the ocean. Their education is likely your and your wife's responsibility. Hours are set aside for lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic, often using books from that precious lighthouse library, or whatever primers the tender might bring. They have chores, of course, suited to their age and strength, helping to fetch water. Tend the small vegetable garden, if you have one. Gather driftwood for the stove. Perhaps even assist with polishing the less critical brasswork or cleaning the lower windows of the tower. Take your kid to work day has a whole different and rather more literal meaning here. They learn self-reliance and a deep respect for the power of nature from a very early age. The routines of the lighthouse, your ascents to the lantern room, the nightly lighting, the watches, become the familiar backdrop to their lives. They understand, implicitly, the supreme importance of the light. They learn to move quietly when you are sleeping after a long night watch. They share in the anticipation and excitement when the smoke of the lighthouse tender is finally spotted on the horizon, signaling the arrival of mail, fresh supplies, and news from the distant, almost mythical, outside world. Family game night might involve a well-worn pack of cards, checkers, or perhaps a lively round of Guess That Foghorn's Distinctive Moan. Good times. There are simple joys, unique to this isolated existence. The profound bond of a family unit drawn tightly together by shared experience and mutual dependence. The quiet satisfaction of a meal shared by lamplight after a long day's work. The thrill of spotting a rare whale or a flock of migrating birds. The beauty of a sunrise witnessed together from the tower gallery, or the cozy security of being inside while a winter storm rages harmlessly, you hope, against your sturdy stone walls. These are the moments that weave a different kind of tapestry, one of shared resilience and quiet affection. But the challenges are undeniable. Loneliness can affect the whole family, not just you. Your wife might miss the companionship of other women, the children, the boisterous play of numerous peers. Sickness or injury are constant worries, with medical help often a perilous boat journey and many hours or even days away. The infrequent arrival of supplies means that any miscalculation or unexpected loss can lead to real hardship, and the constant presence of the powerful, unpredictable sea instills both respect and a certain underlying anxiety. Historians still argue whether, on balance, life at a remote lighthouse station was generally a positive and uniquely character-building experience for the children who grew up there, fostering independence, resilience, and a deep intuitive understanding of the natural world, or if the profound isolation, limited social interaction, and sometimes harsh conditions more often resulted in feelings of detachment, social awkwardness, or even psychological strain when they eventually had to navigate mainland society. For you, the keeper, having your family with you transforms the nature of your solitude. It is no longer absolute, yet the fundamental responsibility for the light, and now for their well-being in this challenging environment, rests even more heavily on your shoulders. Their presence is both a comfort and an added layer of concern. Your quiet crafts of off-duty hours might now include reading aloud to your children, helping them with their lessons, or carving a toy boat for a small, eager hand. The lighthouse is not just your post, it is their home, their world, and your shared routines are the threads that bind you together. A small island of humanity against the vast, indifferent ocean. The quiet rhythms of island family life. If you are fortunate enough to have your loved ones sharing your isolated main station, or the solitary crafts that fill your off-duty hours, you eventually yield to the day's most critical turning point, the approach of dusk. As the sun begins its slow descent towards the western horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange, pink, and deepening purple, a subtle shift occurs in the atmosphere of the lighthouse and within you. The time for daytime chores, for managing supplies, for personal pursuits is drawing to a close. Now, you must meticulously prepare for the night's vigil, focusing all your skill and attention on readying the great lamp for its life-saving performance. This is not a casual flicking of a switch, a task accomplished in moments. In the 1880s, preparing a high-powered lighthouse lamp, likely a sophisticated argon-type burner with multiple concentric wicks, fueled by kerosene, was an exacting, multi-step process that demanded precision and unwavering concentration. The slightest mistake, the smallest oversight, could result in a dim, smoky, or unreliable light, with potentially catastrophic consequences for any vessel navigating the treacherous coastal waters in the darkness. You feel that familiar weight of responsibility settle upon your shoulders, a sensation as constant as the rhythmic crash of waves below. You probably have a very intimate and occasionally exasperating relationship with kerosene by this point. Your first critical task is tending to the wicks. A mainstream historical fact concerning these oil lamps is that proper wick maintenance was absolutely paramount. The argand lamp, with its circular wicks and central draft providing a more efficient and brighter flame, was a marvel of its time, but it was also a bit of a diva, demanding perfect conditions. The wicks, usually made of cotton, needed to be trimmed with surgical precision. Any unevenness, any charred buildup from the previous night's burning, could cause the flame to smoke, sputter, or burn irregularly, leading to a sooty lens and a significantly diminished light. So, out come your specialized wick scissors, their blades sharp and clean. You carefully, meticulously trim each wick to exactly the right height, ensuring a perfectly level, clean edge. This is a skill honed by years of practice, an almost intuitive feel for how the wick will burn. It's like the 1880s version of a really stressful, high-stakes Jenga game, where one wrong snip could bring the whole tower of light crashing down. Metaphorically speaking, once the wicks are perfectly coiffed, it's time to address the fuel. You make your way to the oil house, that sturdy, separate little building where the barrels of precious kerosene are stored, a precaution against the ever-present risk of fire in the main tower or dwelling. With a practiced hand, you draw off the required amount of oil for the night's burning, carefully measuring it. Spilling even a drop feels like a minor sacrilege. Not to mention a smelly mess and a fire hazard, you carry the heavy can of oil, no lightweight plastic containers here, back to the tower and begin the ascent to the lantern room. That familiar spiral staircase, your daily cardio, feels a bit more challenging with a full, sloshing can of fuel in your grip. In the lantern room, now bathed in the soft, fading light of twilight, you carefully fill the lamp's reservoir. This, too, is done with utmost care, ensuring no air bubbles are trapped in the fuel lines, which could cause the flame to flicker or fail. You check the oil level indicators, making sure it's filled to the precise mark. Every component of the lamp mechanism is given a final inspection. Are the burner elements clean and free of any old soot? Do the rack and pinion mechanisms that raise and lower the wicks move smoothly? If your lighthouse has a rotating lens, driven by a clockwork mechanism powered by descending weights that you would have wound earlier in the day, you ensure it's fully wound and ready to begin its steady, sweeping arc. You might give a final polish to any reflectors or metallic parts that could have accumulated a speck of dust since your morning cleaning. You lay out your tools for the night, watch fresh cloths for wiping condensation from the lantern panes, perhaps a small pricker for clearing any blockage in the burner, and, of course, your supply of matches kept dry and ready. A quirky tidbit from the lives of these dedicated keepers is the almost personal, intuitive relationship many of them developed with their lamps. Some old hands claimed they could read the flame like a living entity, discerning from its color, its shape, its steadiness, and even the subtle sounds it made, whether everything was perfectly adjusted or if some infinitesimal problem was beginning to develop. It was a bond forged through countless hours of shared vigil, a deep, unspoken understanding between man and machine. Historians still argue whether the prevailing level of anxiety experienced by lighthouse keepers regarding the ever-present possibility of lamp failure during a critical stormy night was a constant, gnawing, underlying stress that took a heavy toll on their mental well-being, or if their profound confidence in their own meticulous preparations and by the 1880s. Generally quite reliable lamp technology usually allowed for a calmer, more routine, though always vigilant, state of mind. For you, as you complete these final preparations, there's likely a mixture of both a deep sense of responsibility, certainly, but also a quiet confidence born of skill and habit. You've done this hundreds, perhaps thousands of times. The sun is now kissing the horizon, its last rays setting the western sky ablaze. The sea below is turning from sparkling blue to a deeper, more mysterious gray. The moment is approaching. You've checked every detail, anticipated every need. The lamp, that demanding but vital heart of your lighthouse, is primed and ready. Your meticulous preparations for the night's vigil are complete. All that remains is to bring forth the flame. And as you stand there, in the hushed anticipation of the lantern room, you can't help but marvel at how much easier it is for future generations, who will just casually flip a switch without a second thought for the gallons of kerosene, the perfectly trimmed wicks, and the unwavering human dedication that this light requires. The last of the lamp's meticulous preparations are complete. Every wick is trimmed to a perfect, even crescent. Every brass fitting gleams softly in the fading light. The oil reservoir is full and expectant. You stand in the lantern room, high atop your stone tower on the rugged Maine coast, a solitary figure poised at the cusp of day and night. Outside, the sun has kissed the watery horizon, its fiery farewell painting the western sky in strokes of deep crimson and soft violet. The sea below is darkening, its daytime blues and greens surrendering to the mysterious indigos and grays of twilight. This is the appointed hour, the moment your vigil truly begins. It's time to bring forth the guiding flame. If you had descended after the afternoon preparations, you now make that familiar climb once more up the winding spiral staircase, perhaps with a final, careful check of your pocket watch against the official timepiece in your dwelling. Punctuality is paramount. The light must be exhibited precisely at sunset, as dictated by the lighthouse service regulations. To be early is wasteful, to be late is unthinkable, a potential dereliction of duty that could endanger lives. As you ascend, the air in the tower feels cooler, imbued with the encroaching chill of the evening. Reaching the lantern room, you are greeted by the magnificent Fresnel lens, its countless prisms now dark and waiting, like a dormant crystal giant, ready to awaken. The ritual of lighting the lamp is performed with the same focused precision as all your other duties. You take a long match, perhaps a specialized taper, from its dry, safe container. With a steady hand, you strike it, the tiny flare of sulfur and phosphorus a small, defiant spark against the gathering gloom. Then, one with infinite care, you introduce this nascent flame to the perfectly trimmed wicks of the great argand lamp. If it's a multi-wick lamp, as many of the larger ones were, you light them in the prescribed sequence, watching as each wick catches, sputters for a heartbeat, and then blossoms into a clear, steady flame. It's the original let there be light moment, but with significantly more kerosene and a much greater immediate responsibility. Now comes the critical adjustment phase. The wicks must be raised to their optimal height to produce the brightest possible light without smoking. Too low, and the flame is dim. Its reach curtailed. Too high, and it will burn inefficiently, producing excessive soot that will quickly foul the lamp chimney and the precious lens, and waste precious oil. You watch the flames intently, your experienced eye judging their color, their shape, their intensity. You make minute adjustments using the delicate rack and pinion mechanisms, coaxing each flame into a tall, white, unwavering spear of light. This is where a keeper's true skill and intuition shine. It's an art as much as a science. A quirky tidbit is that some seasoned keepers claimed they had almost superstitious personal rituals or a specific, unwritten sequence of actions they performed when lighting the lamp. Small, idiosyncratic habits they believed brought good luck or ensured a perfectly burning, trouble-free light through the long night. Maybe you touch a particular spot on the brass, or whisper a silent personal invocation. As the flames reach their full, smokeless brilliance within the heart of the lamp, the magic of the Fresnel lens begins. The light, now a dazzling core of incandescence, is seized by those thousands of precisely angled prisms. It is bent, refracted, reflected, and concentrated into powerful, sweeping beams, or a single intense fixed ray, depending on the characteristic of your particular lighthouse. And then, it happens. The first pulse of light slices through the twilight, a brilliant, unwavering sword cutting through the encroaching darkness, reaching out for miles across the now inky sea. If your lighthouse has a revolving characteristic, perhaps a single flash every 10 seconds, or alternating flashes of white and red, you also ensure the clockwork rotation mechanism, which you wound earlier, is engaged and turning the massive lens assembly at its prescribed, steady pace. A mainstream historical fact is that each lighthouse possessed a unique light characteristic, a specific pattern of flashes, colors, and occultations periods of darkness, which allowed mariners to identify it from a distance and thus determine their own position on nautical charts. Ensuring this characteristic was perfectly maintained, the timing precise, the colors true, was a vital part of your responsibility. One wrong flash pattern could dangerously mislead a ship. You step out onto the narrow gallery that encircles the lantern room, the wind whipping at your coat, the scent of the sea sharp and invigorating. Below, the world is surrendering tonight, but above, your light is now a radiant, artificial star, a beacon of hope and guidance. You watch its beams sweep across the waves, a reassuring presence in the vast emptiness. There's a profound sense of satisfaction in this moment, a quiet pride in a job well done, a deep understanding of the vital role you play. Your fiery child is awake and on duty for the night. The tower, a mere stone structure by day, has now transformed into a living thing, its eye open and watchful. The seagulls, of course, probably remain entirely unimpressed by this nightly spectacle, more concerned with their own nocturnal fishing prospects. Historians still argue whether the profound psychological effect on lighthouse keepers of this daily ritual, of personally bringing forth such an immense and beautiful light against the overwhelming darkness and the often terrifying power of the storms, typically fostered a kind of quasi-religious sense of awe, purpose, and almost mystical duty, or if over years and decades of repetition, it eventually became just another complex, albeit critically important, mechanical routine. Its initial wonder dulled by familiarity. For you, even after countless sunsets, there's likely still a quiet thrill, a deep resonance in this moment when your efforts culminate in that first, glorious burst of light. You've pushed back the darkness for another night. Your vigil has begun. The great lamp is lit, its powerful beams slicing through the deepening twilight. A steadfast, guiding flame now entrusted to your care for the long hours of darkness ahead. The initial, almost ceremonial act of ignition gives way to the sustained, quiet rhythm of your midnight oil burning. This is the heart of your lonely vigil, a period of profound solitude where your senses are heightened, your responsibility absolute, and the vast, indifferent ocean your only close companion. The exciting nightlife of an 1880s Maine lighthouse keeper mostly involves staring intently at a very large lamp and hoping it doesn't decide to throw a tantrum. The night watch is a unique kind of duty. There's no bustling activity, no clang of tools or chatter of voices. Instead, it's an exercise in unwavering vigilance, a quiet battle against fatigue, and a deep immersion in the sounds and sensations of the isolated night. A mainstream historical fact is that these night watches were incredibly demanding. If you were the sole keeper at a smaller station, or if your assistant was off duty or ill, you were responsible for the entire night, from sunset to sunrise. At larger stations with multiple keepers, watches might be divided, typically into 4-hour stints, but even then, each keeper faced long periods alone with the light. Lighthouse service regulations were strict, often specifying how frequently the lamp needed to be checked, sometimes as often as every hour, or even more frequently during poor weather. Your primary task, of course, is to monitor the lamp itself. You can't just light it and forget it, assuming it will behave itself until morning. Oil lamps, even sophisticated argon burners, require tending. You listen for any change in the hiss of the flame. Watch for any sign of smoking or flickering that might indicate a problem with the wick trim or oil flow. You check the height of the flame, making small and precise adjustments to the wick mechanisms as needed to maintain optimal brightness and a clean burn. A poorly burning lamp not only provides a dimmer light, but also produces more soot, which will quickly obscure the lens and reduce its effectiveness. You're like a conductor leading an orchestra of one very bright, very important, and occasionally temperamental flame. Throughout the night, you also need to monitor the oil level in the lamp's service reservoir. These lamps consumed a considerable amount of fuel, and on a long winter night, the service tank would likely need refilling. This means carefully decanting more kerosene from a larger storage can kept in the lantern room, a task requiring a steady hand to avoid spills, which were both a waste and a serious fire hazard in the confined hot space. In colder weather, you also have to wipe condensation or even frost from the inside of the lantern room, glass panes to ensure the beam remains clear and unobstructed. And if your lighthouse has a revolving lens, you listen to the steady, rhythmic groan and click of its clockwork rotation mechanism. ensuring it continues its vital, sweeping dance without faltering. The mechanism itself, powered by heavy weights descending through the tower, would need to be rewound periodically, another task for the night watch. Beyond the lamp itself, you are a constant observer of the weather and the sea. From your vantage point high in the tower, you have a panoramic, if often dark and storm-tossed, view. You note any changes in wind direction or strength, the buildup of clouds, the first subtle signs of approaching fog. The state of the sea, are the waves building? Is the tide doing anything unusual is also critical information. This isn't just idle skygazing. Your observations are vital for anticipating conditions that might pose a threat to shipping, and for understanding how your light is performing in those conditions. And then there's the ever-present challenge of staying awake and alert through the deep, silent hours. The graveyard shift is notorious for a reason. The warmth of the lantern room, the rhythmic sounds, the profound stillness, all can conspire to lull even the most dedicated keeper towards drowsiness. You might pace the narrow confines of the lantern room gallery, stepping outside into the biting wind to clear your head. You might have a small stool where you can sit, but never for too long. Reading, by the dim light of a small, carefully shielded auxiliary lamp so as not to interfere with the main beacon, could help pass the time and keep the mind engaged. And, of course, there's coffee or strong tea. If your supplies allow, coffee, the true, unsung fuel of the U.S. Lighthouse service. Probably. Having to descend those many spiral stairs in the dead of night for a privy break, especially in a storm, was probably a pretty effective way to wake yourself up too. The sounds of the night become your intimate companions. The constant howl or mournful sigh of the wind around the tower, the rhythmic crash and roar of waves against the cliffs or shore, the distant eerie cry of night birds, the creak of the tower itself, settling or straining in the wind, the steady, almost hypnotic, whir and click of the lens rotation machinery, if you have it. A quirky tidbit from keeper lore is that some reported experiencing a kind of highway hypnosis from staring at the endlessly revolving beam for hours on end, while others, in the depths of their isolation and fatigue, claim to see phantom ships, the Flying Dutchman of the Maine coast, perhaps, or hear inexplicable whispers and sounds carried on the wind. Your only living companions are usually the occasional bewildered moth batting against the lantern glass. Or maybe you tell yourself that the slight creak in the floorboards is just the ghost of the previous keeper, checking up on your wick trimming skills. Mostly kidding, of course. Mostly. Historians still argue whether the primary and most significant challenge for lighthouse keepers during these long, solitary night watches was the sheer physical battle against sleep and exhaustion, or if it was the more insidious mental and emotional strain of prolonged isolation. The weight of immense unseen responsibility for the lives of distant, unknown mariners, and the psychological effects of existing in such an extreme, elemental environment. It was likely an unholy trinity of all three. But through it all, your purpose remains clear to ensure that light, your light, shines true and steady, a brilliant, unwavering beacon in the vast, uncaring darkness. Every check, every adjustment, every moment of wakeful vigilance is a small act of defiance against the chaos of the sea, a commitment to the safety of those who depend on your unwavering flame. The midnight oil is indeed burning, and you, its solitary guardian, are keeping faith with the night. The deep, solitary hours of your midnight vigil wear on, your senses attuned to every flicker of the lamp, every moan of the wind, every distant sigh of the restless Maine sea. You've paced the gallery, checked the oil, trimmed the wicks perhaps for the second or third time, and stared into the vast, uncaring darkness until your eyes ache. But what if you're not entirely alone in this monumental task? What if your lighthouse station is one of the larger, more critical beacons? Or one prone to such relentless fog that a second pair of hands and eyes is deemed essential by the U.S.E. Lighthouse service? In that case, your lonely watch will eventually be punctuated by the quiet ritual of the watch change whispers, a brief human interlude in the heart of the isolated night. A mainstream historical fact is that many of the more significant 19th century lighthouses especially those with powerful first or second order Fresnel lenses. Complex rotation machinery, or demanding steam-powered fog signals, were indeed assigned one or sometimes even two assistant keepers. This wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity for ensuring the light and fog signal, if applicable, operated flawlessly around the clock, year after year. It also allowed for keepers to get some measure of actual, uninterrupted sleep, which, as you can imagine, was pretty crucial for not eventually seeing sea monsters in the lens or trying to have a philosophical debate with a barnacle. So, if you're a principal keeper with an assistant, your night isn't an unbroken stretch of solitude, but a shared burden. As the predetermined hour for the watch change approaches, perhaps 2 a.m., the very nadir of the night, you begin your preparations for the handover. You give the lamp a final, meticulous check, ensuring it's burning as perfectly as possible for your colleague. You note any subtle changes in the weather, any distant lights on the horizon, any quirks the lamp might have displayed during your watch. Then, you make your way down those familiar spiral stairs, your steps perhaps a little heavier with fatigue now, to rouse your assistant. This isn't done with a blaring alarm clock. Obviously, a gentle knock on their door in the keeper's dwelling. A quiet word. Time for your watch, Miller, or whatever his name might be. You try not to wake the whole household. If families are present, the Lighthouse service runs on vigilance, but also on a certain amount of hushed consideration for sleeping dependents. Your assistant, groggy but quickly shaking off sleep, for this is his duty too, dresses and prepares for his ascent. Meanwhile, you might quickly jot down any pertinent notes in the rough log or on a slate, ready for the official entry later. Then, the two of you pass on the stairs, or meet briefly at the base of the tower, one weary figure heading towards a few precious hours of rest, the other preparing to face the elements and the lamp. It's a brief moment of camaraderie, a shared understanding of the unique life you both lead. It's like having a co-pilot for your lonely night flight into the abyss of 3 a.m. Only your cockpit smells strongly of kerosene and salt. The true handover, however, takes place up in the lantern room, beside the great pulsing heart of the light, here in hushed tones, so as not to disturb the hopefully sleeping world beyond your stone tower. You relay the vital information. She's burning clean tonight, a bit of a pull on the north wick around midnight, but I've trimmed it. Wind steady from the northeast. Visibility about 5 miles. Saw a schooner pass southwards about an hour ago. Oil's good for another 2 hours in the service tank. Your assistant nods, his eyes already scanning the flame, the lens, the dark horizon. He might ask a question or two. He notes the readings on any gauges. This is the transfer of responsibility, a sacred trust passed from one pair of capable hands to another. You wouldn't want the handover information to be just a grunt and a vague point at the lamp, especially when lives are at stake. A quirky tidbit from the annals of lighthouse keeping is that despite the strict regulations and formal procedures laid down by the lighthouse service, unspoken understandings and highly personalized routines often develop between keepers who work together for long periods at the same station. They would learn each other's strengths, weaknesses, and idiosyncrasies. Perhaps one was particularly adept at fine-tuning the lamp, while the other had a knack for predicting fog. They might develop subtle signals or shorthand ways of communicating essential information, a kind of lighthouse common law that ensured the smooth operation of their shared domain, as long as the light itself was never, ever compromised. Once the handover is complete, and you're satisfied that the light is in good hands, a wave of relief, mixed with profound weariness, likely washes over you. The immense responsibility that has been yours alone for the past several hours now shifts to your colleague. You can finally descend those stairs for the last time until your next watch, your thoughts already turning towards your bunk and the oblivion of sleep. Your assistant, meanwhile, settles into his own vigil, his senses now fully alert, his gaze fixed on the flame and the surrounding darkness. He is the new guardian, the solitary watcher. Historians still argue whether the complex hierarchical relationship between principal keepers and their assistants, often living in very close and isolated quarters for extended periods, was generally one of harmonious collegial cooperation and effective mentorship. fostering a strong team spirit, or if it was frequently fraught with underlying tensions arising from personality clashes. Disputes over the division of labor or interpretation of regulations, or the inherent psychological stresses of the demanding and confined lifestyle. It likely varied greatly from station to station, keeper to keeper. One bad apple, or even just two clashing personalities, could make an isolated lighthouse a very tense place indeed. For you, though, as you thankfully crawl into your bunk, the sounds of the wind and sea now a distant, muffled lullaby rather than an immediate concern. The watch change represents a brief but vital human connection, a sharing of an extraordinary burden. The whispers in the lantern room, the quiet exchange of responsibility, ensure that even as one keeper rests, the light itself never falters, its guiding flame continuing its steadfast, silent sweep across the dark and treacherous waters. It's a brief moment of teamwork in an overwhelmingly solitary profession, a small assurance that you are not entirely alone in keeping the midnight oil burning. And that brief social interaction is probably the highlight of your night. Definitely better than another one-sided conversation with the lamp about its oil consumption habits. The quiet exchange of responsibility during a watch change, that brief human connection in the vast solitude of the night, offers a measure of shared burden and relief. But there are times, keeper my apologies, the threads of old narratives are persistent. When the routines of your isolated Maine lighthouse life, whether solitary or shared, are violently interrupted, when the quiet diligence of your vigil is tested to its absolute limits. These are the times when the raw, untamed power of the North Atlantic unleashes its fury in the form of a monstrous storm, a fierce nor'easter that transforms your familiar world into a chaotic battleground of wind, water, and sheer elemental rage. It often begins subtly. You notice the barometer, that faithful glass companion, taking a determined plunge. The wind, once steady from a predictable quarter, starts to shift restlessly, then builds with a menacing, guttural moan. The sky, perhaps clear only hours before, darkens with an ominous, bruised-looking underbelly of cloud. The sea itself changes character, its rhythmic swells becoming agitated, confused, then building into steep, white-capped mountains of water that hurl themselves against your rocky perch with increasing violence. This isn't just a bit of bad weather. This is nature deciding to redecorate your coastline, usually with more rocks and significantly less pier. A mainstream historical fact is that the New England coast, and Maine in particular, is notorious for these powerful nor'easters, especially during the fall and winter months, bringing hurricane-force winds, torrential rain or blinding snow, and truly terrifying sea conditions. As the storm hits with its full ferocity, your lighthouse tower, which normally feels as solid and unshakable as the ancient rock it's built upon, might begin to tremble, to groan under the assault. The wind shrieks around the lantern room like 1,000 tormented banshees, rattling the thick glass panes, seeking any tiny crevice to force its way in. Rain or sleet lashes against the tower with the force of buckshot. And the waves, the waves. They explode against the base of the tower, sending plumes of spray hundreds of feet into the air, sometimes completely engulfing the lower portions of the structure. If your lighthouse is on a particularly exposed rock or small island, it can feel as though the entire ocean is trying to reclaim your tiny foothold of land. It's slightly more intense than your average office job during a heavy shower. Your duties, already demanding, now become exponentially more critical and perilous. Keeping the great lamp burning true and steady through such a tempest is your absolute, non-negotiable priority. The wind can create unpredictable drafts in the lantern room that threaten to extinguish the flame or make it burn erratically. You might have to make constant, minute adjustments to the wicks and ventilators, shielding the delicate flame, fighting to maintain its bright, clear signal against the screaming chaos outside. Ice might form on the exterior of the lantern glass, obscuring the beam, requiring you to brave the narrow, wind-swept gallery with scrapers or de-icing fluids, a truly terrifying prospect with mountainous waves crashing just below. And if your station is equipped with a fog signal, perhaps a massive steam-powered horn, or a mechanically operated bell or diaphone, it will be blasting its mournful, penetrating warning into the teeth of the storm. A desperate sound of guidance for any vessel unfortunate enough to be caught out in the maelstrom. If it's a manually operated foghorn, powered by hand bellows or a crank, the physical exertion required to keep it sounding for hours, or even days, on end is almost superhuman. That deep, resonant moan becomes the official soundtrack of a Maine nor'easter, a duet with the roaring wind. Every ascent and descent of those winding tower stairs, a routine daily task, now becomes a hazardous undertaking. The tower might be slick with driven rain or spray, the wind threatening to tear the very door from your grasp. You listen intently for any new, alarming sounds, the groaning of stressed timbers, the rattle of a loose shutter, the ominous crack of straining metal, anything that might indicate structural damage. You are not just a keeper of the light now, you are a keeper of the tower itself, its first line of defense against the storm's destructive power. Historians still argue whether the architectural design and construction methods of 19th century lighthouses, particularly those incredibly exposed offshore stations known as wave-swept towers, were always genuinely robust enough to consistently withstand the absolute most extreme weather conditions predicted for their locations, or if there was often an unavoidable element of calculated risk and, very occasionally, catastrophic failure. Despite the best engineering knowledge and materials of the time, standing inside your tower as it shudders under the impact of a truly monstrous wave, you might find yourself pondering that debate with a very personal, immediate interest. Your courage and diligence are tested to their breaking point during these storms. Sleep is often impossible. Meals are snatched. And every ounce of your physical and mental energy is focused on keeping that light alive and the station intact. There's the constant gnawing anxiety for the ships out there, unseen in the blinding storm, desperately searching for your guiding beam or the sound of your fog signal. Every instinct screams for shelter, for safety. But your duty holds you fast in the most dangerous place of all. You might find yourself thinking, just for a fleeting moment, you know, maybe I should have taken that quiet desk job in Augusta after all. A quirky tidbit, and a testament to the human spirit in such circumstances, are the many authenticated tales of lighthouse keepers, and often their equally heroic wives or daughters, performing incredible acts of bravery during severe storms. They might spot a ship in distress, perilously close to the rocks, and manage against all odds to signal a warning or even participate in rescue efforts, rowing small boats into unimaginable seas or tending to hypothermic, injured survivors washed ashore. These acts went far beyond the official duties of lightkeeping, but were a profound expression of their humanity and commitment to their fellow mariners. As the storm rages, perhaps for days on end, you exist in a heightened state of vigilance, a solitary warrior battling the elements. The world is reduced to the howling wind, the crashing sea, and the steady, unwavering pulse of your precious light. It is in these moments of extreme trial that the true measure of a lighthouse keeper is taken. Your courage and your dedication etched into every blast of wind, every thundering wave. Your job is to ensure that, no matter how fierce the storm, your beacon remains a steadfast promise of hope and safety. The fury of the nor'easter has finally blown itself out, leaving behind a scoured coastline, a still turbulent sea, and you, the keeper, weary but resolute, your light having burned true through the tempest. The immediate dangers have passed, the tower still stands, and the rhythm of your more routine duties slowly reasserts itself. But after the intense focus and adrenaline of battling a storm, or even just after the long, quiet stretches of ordinary solitude, a particular kind of anticipation begins to build within you, a yearning for connection that only one event can satisfy the sighting of the lighthouse tender. The mailboat, your infrequent but profoundly welcome link to the distant mainland. For an 1880s Maine lighthouse keeper, particularly one stationed on an isolated island or a remote, inaccessible headland, Contact with the outside world is a rare and precious commodity. The lighthouse tender, that sturdy government vessel tasked with servicing the myriad lights along the coast, might only call at your station once a month or once a quarter, sometimes even less frequently if winter ice or persistent foul weather delays its rounds. Its arrival is therefore an occasion of immense significance, a red-letter day marked by a flurry of activity and a surge of emotion. It's better than Christmas, birthdays, and finding a forgotten $20 bill in an old coat pocket, all rolled into one glorious, smoke-belching, boat-shaped package. You develop an almost sixth sense for its approach. Perhaps you know its approximate schedule, though that's always subject to the whims of the Maine weather. You find yourself scanning the horizon more frequently, your keen keeper's eyes searching for that first smudge of smoke, that familiar silhouette against the vast expanse of sea and sky. If you have family at the station, the children might be the first to spot it. Their shouts of, the tender is coming," echoing through the small dwelling, bringing everyone running. Even the most stoic keeper would feel a quickening of the pulse at that sight. It means fresh supplies. Yes, remember your careful management of dwindling oil and salt pork. But just as importantly, it means mail, news, and the faces of fellow human beings from beyond your watery confines. As the tender steams closer, anchors in a suitable spot if your station lacks a proper pier. This might be some distance offshore, and prepares to send a longboat ashore. The anticipation becomes almost unbearable. A mainstream historical fact is that these tenders were the absolute lifeline for lighthouse keepers, carrying not only all essential supplies like oil, coal, food, and maintenance materials, but also official correspondence from the lighthouse service, payroll, personnel new keepers arriving, or those going on leave, and most eagerly awaited of all, personal mail. The exchange itself is a period of controlled, efficient bustle. Barrels of oil are unloaded, sacks of flour and potatoes are brought ashore, crates of tinned goods and other necessities are carefully inventoried. You hand over your meticulously kept logbooks and reports for the district inspector, along with your carefully penned requisitions for the next supply period. And then, the moment you've truly been waiting for the mailbag. Letters from family members far away, describing births, deaths, marriages, the mundane happenings of a life you are so distant from. Letters from friends, perhaps other keepers at different stations, sharing news and commiserations, newspapers and magazines, even if they are weeks or months out of date, are devoured hungrily, offering glimpses of national events, political debates, new inventions perhaps none as good as your own forgotten Song Dynasty ones. If only you knew. And the general flow of life in the wider world. You might find yourself reading a 3-week-old account of a minor political squabble in Washington, with the breathless intensity usually reserved for breaking news. A quirky tidbit related to these vital deliveries is that, in particularly rough weather, or at stations where landing a boat directly was too perilous, keepers and tender crews developed ingenious methods for exchanging mail and small, urgent supplies. This might involve a mail buoy, a waterproof container floated between the tender and the shore on a line, or a system where a small boat from the tender would get as close as safely possible. And items would be carefully passed across or even hauled up the cliffs using ropes. The mail must get through, even if it requires a bit of creative, death-defying logistics. The crew of the tender, and any officials aboard like the lighthouse inspector, always a source of some anxiety. That one. He's the guest you secretly hope gets just a little bit seasick on the way over. Bring with them the invaluable gift of conversation. For a few hours, your profound isolation is broken. You exchange news, share stories, catch up on gossip from other stations along the coast. You hear different voices, see new faces. It's a brief, intense burst of social interaction that has to sustain you through the long, quiet weeks or months until the next visit. Historians still argue whether the news and information that actually reached these highly isolated lighthouse keepers via the infrequent tender visits was generally sufficient to keep them adequately informed and connected to major national and global events. or if they often lived in a significant information lag, their understanding of the world outside their immediate station being weeks, mesiso, or even months, out of date and heavily filtered. Imagine learning about a major election result or a significant international crisis long after it had already resolved itself or morphed into something else entirely. Then, all too soon, the exchange is complete, supplies are ashore, mail is delivered, official business concluded, the tender's longboat returns to the ship, the anchor is weighed, and with a blast of its whistle and a plume of smoke, your vital link to the mainland steams away, disappearing over the horizon. A certain melancholy might settle over you then, the return to profound quiet and isolation feeling even more acute after the brief flurry of contact. But you also have treasures to sustain you, a fresh stock of provisions, and, most importantly, those precious letters and newspapers. The next few evenings will be spent poring over every word, reading and rereading, savoring each piece of news, each expression of affection from loved ones. You'll devour it all far too quickly, and of course. And then the quiet countdown, the hopeful scanning of the horizon, for the next mailboat will begin all over again. The lighthouse tender, your fleeting connection to the bustling, distant mainland, has become a dwindling speck on the vast horizon, its smoke trail dissolving into the salty air. The precious letters it brought are now carefully read, perhaps reread several times, and the newspapers, however out of date, have been thoroughly absorbed. The brief flurry of human interaction is over, and the familiar, profound quiet of your isolated station settles back in, as comforting and as challenging as ever. As another day begins its slow arc towards dusk, and the relentless cycle of your duties prepares to turn once more, you find yourself reflecting on this vital, solitary role you inhabit. Your life measured by the turning of the light and the rhythm of the enduring, lonely sea. This is the essence of your existence here in 1880s coastal Maine, a life of routine, responsibility, and a unique kind of solitude. Each day brings its familiar tasks, the pre-dawn ascent, the meticulous polishing of the great Fresnel lens until it sparkles like a captive star, the careful entries in the logbook chronicling wind and wave, the constant vigilance over oil and wicks, the endless battle against rust and decay. It's a life that could, from the outside, seem monotonous, a relentless repetition of the same chores against the same dramatic, yet unchanging backdrop of sea and sky. Your main performance review metric is pretty straightforward. Did any ships crash into the rocks today? No, excellent. Carry on. Yet, within this structured monotony, there's a profound sense of purpose. You are the guardian of the light, a linchpin in the vast, complex machinery of maritime safety. Every night, when that powerful beam cuts its swath through the darkness, you know that unseen mariners, navigating treacherous waters, are looking for its familiar flash, depending on its steadfast presence to guide them safely past hidden reefs and iron-bound shores. A mainstream historical fact is that the U.S. Lighthouse Service, throughout the 19th century, built its reputation on the unwavering reliability of its lights, a reliability that was almost entirely dependent on the dedication, skill, and often unheralded conscientiousness of individual keepers like you. This knowledge, this understanding of the lives that rest on your diligence, is a heavy weight, but also a source of immense quiet pride. The solitude, and of course, is a constant companion, a defining characteristic of your existence. There are days, perhaps weeks, especially during the harsh Maine winters or prolonged periods of fog, when you might not see another human soul beyond your own family, if they share your station. The only voices you hear are the cry of the gulls, the mournful sigh of the wind, the endless, complex dialogue of the ocean, and perhaps the sound of your own thoughts. Some might crumble under such profound isolation. But for you, perhaps it has become a crucible, forging a unique resilience, a deep self-reliance, and an intimate connection with the elemental world around you. You've probably had more meaningful conversations with particularly stoic-looking barnacles than some city folk have with their neighbors. A quirky tidbit about the psychology of this life is that many lighthouse keepers developed a remarkably strong, almost personal attachment to their towers and their lights. They might refer to the lighthouse as if it were a living entity, a trusted, if demanding, companion in their solitude. They understood its moods, its groans in a heavy gale, the specific song of the wind in its ventilator, the precise way the lamp burned when all was well. The light wasn't just a machine, it was an extension of themselves, a projection of their own vigilance and care out into the vast, indifferent darkness. Your lighthouse is less a workplace and more a very tall, very luminous, and slightly moody roommate. You reflect on the small satisfactions that punctuate your days, the perfection of a newly trimmed wick burning with a clean, bright flame, the gleam of the polished lens as it catches the morning sun, the relief and gratitude in the faces of the tender crew when they arrive after a long journey, the simple comfort of a warm fire and a good book while a storm rages outside, a letter from a loved one finally held in your hand. These are the quiet joys that sustain you, the small, bright sparks in the vastness of your solitary routine. Historians still argue whether the pervasive romantic, often heroic, image of the lighthouse keeper so popular in 19th and early 20th century art, literature, and public imagination, the image of the lone stoic figure battling the elements to save countless lives, accurately capture the true essence of their often arduous, highly regulated, and sometimes intensely monotonous daily lives. Or did this romanticization serve more as a societal projection, a way for a rapidly industrializing world to idealize virtues like steadfastness, self-sacrifice, and unwavering duty by embodying them in these remote, almost mythical figures guarding the perilous coasts? As with most things, the reality for you is likely a complex blend of the heroic and the humble, the extraordinary and the mundane. As dusk once more begins to draw its soft, gray curtain across the sea, you prepare for the nightly ritual. The lamp is ready, its reservoirs full, its wicks perfectly trimmed. You will ascend those familiar spiral stairs, you will strike the match, and you will once again bring forth that guiding flame. It's a cycle as old as lighthouses themselves, a testament to the enduring human need for guidance and safety in a challenging world. Your life here is not one of grand adventures or dramatic discoveries in the conventional sense. Its glamour is measured in lumens, its heroism and reliability, but in your quiet, steadfast dedication, in your unwavering commitment to keeping that lonely light burning true, there is a profound and enduring dignity. Your legacy might just be a perfectly kept logbook, an impeccably polished lens, and a long list of ships that didn't wreck, and that, in itself, is a remarkable achievement. And after all this, you probably still just dream of a really good cup of coffee that hasn't been waiting for the tender for 3 months. And so, as the great lamp once more throws its steadfast beam out across the darkening waves, our journey into the quiet, daily routines of an 1880s Maine lighthouse keeper comes to its gentle close. We've stood with you through the chill pre-dawn awakenings, shared in the meticulous care of the precious lens, felt the solitude of the long night watches, and anticipated the hopeful arrival of the mailboat. We've glimpsed a life of profound responsibility, lived out against a backdrop of rugged beauty and elemental power. May the image of that enduring, lonely light, and the steadfast keeper who tended it, bring a sense of calm and peace to your mind as you prepare for your own rest. The world of the 19th century lighthouse keeper, with its kerosene lamps, its intricate clockwork, and its profound isolation, has faded back into the mists of history. But the values it embodied, diligence, responsibility, a quiet courage in the face of adversity, and the profound importance of a guiding light in the darkness, these things still resonate. Let the rhythmic sweep of that imagined beam soothe your thoughts, and may you drift off to sleep with a sense of the enduring human spirit, forever tending its beacons against the vast and often stormy sea of existence. End of script. Sweet dreams.